Hello there, my name is Martin Henley. This is the Effective Marketing Content Extravaganza. And if this is your first time here, you couldn't possibly know that I am on a mission to give you everything you could possibly need if you are looking to be more successful in your business. Providing, of course, what you need if you're looking to be more successful is to know more about and be implementing more efficiently, more enthusiastically, and more effectively sales and marketing in your business, which is, of course, what you need. You need more customers more profitably. And eventually, everything you need to do that will be here on this channel. What goes on here is I'm giving you everything I know about sales and marketing as part of the What the series. That happens on a Monday. On a Tuesday, I bring in anyone I can find who with experience to share with you if you're looking to be more successful in your business. Let's talk marketing on a Tuesday. On a Wednesday, Melanie Farmer comes through. We look at the marketing news. We speculate wildly about what it might mean for you in your marketing life, in your business. And on the other Wednesday, I review so you don't have to. Very soon, I'm going to be here thinking out loud. That will happen on a Thursday. And on a Friday, we review the very best and the very worst of marketing content on the internet. So if that sounds like it might be interesting or useful, please tell me it does. We're only here to be interesting and useful. Now would be a good time to like, share, subscribe, comment, and get involved, because that will give us the motivation we need to continue on this epic journey. Now, if you are seeing this on the day that we go live, it will be a Tuesday, which means it's Talk Marketing, which means we have a guest for you. So today's guest has been involved in marketing since 1997 when he was busy designing websites. Since then, he has been a technical director in e-learning, founded 2 web design companies. He is currently a freelance actor and brand consultant and digital marketer at Frank and Marcy, where he helps personal brands rise above the blah. He was introduced to us by the hugely impressive John Espirian, who tells us that he is a quirky kind of guy, fantastic, has a great heart, and is endlessly fascinating to talk to. No pressure. He is the man with the most talked about moustache in marketing that talks. That is a talking moustache. Today's guest is Frank Prendergast. Good afternoon, Frank.
How's it going? Brilliant. Love that introduction. Fantastic. And very kind words from Mr. John Espirian there as well.
John Espirian is such a lovely guy, isn't he? He is such a lovely guy.
He really is. I'm a member of his Espresso Plus community, and the whole community is just filled with lovely people because, of course, it is only lovely people that John Espirian attracts.
Yes.
Anytime I connect with people on LinkedIn, whenever I connect with someone from the Espresso Plus community, it's like I just know, it's like a guarantee. I'm not going to regret this. These are lovely people. Brilliant.
Yes. And I don't know if all of these people, but he introduced us to Gillian Whitney, who's part of his community. She introduced us to Vicky O'Neill and Michelle Raymond down in Australia. I don't know if they're also part of the community. Niraj introduced himself to us. So this podcast has taken a little bit of a John Espirian flavour since he was involved. Yeah. And I kind of get a sense that that's what happens. If you get too close to John Espirian, you get some of that flavour.
Sure, yeah.
Cool, good, excellent. So should we let people know that I crashed my motorbike this week and I'm on drugs a little bit, and that may be why I struggled a little bit with the introduction? I might struggle a little bit with lots of things in the next hour and a half because I'm on drugs. Do I need to let people know that?
It didn't seem like you struggled at all. It's Friday. It's a good day to be on drugs.
Good. Okay, good. As long as everyone thinks that, will be absolutely fine. The drugs I'm talking about are prescribed painkillers. That's what's going on. They're very good. I'm doing my very best not to become addicted to them. They are absolutely lovely.
I hope you're doing okay. That sounds awful.
Do I not look like I'm doing okay? I think I look like I'm doing great.
You look like you're doing great, but like a motorcycle crash does not sound like the thing that you want to be dealing with.
No, it's not particularly. The truth is, I didn't hit my head or anything. I landed on some gravel, so I've got like a lot of. It's pretty ugly underneath. But the drugs are working an absolute treat. I have to tell you, I'm feeling absolutely fine. Okay, good. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of this, there's a couple of things that I'm interested to touch on. Let's touch on the acting thing, because if there's a theme that runs through all of these, I think you are number 98. So we're coming close to like 100 of these. If there's a theme that runs through it, it's that the vast majority of marketing people have come from some kind of creative situation or some sort of creative bent, which leads me to the question, is marketing just performative? Are we just showmen, really? Are we snake oil salesmen? Are we just, someone called me a snake oil salesman. I'm not accusing you of being one, but how much of marketing is performative? That's the question.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's a really good question, but I'm not a Shakespeare scholar, but wasn't it Shakespeare that said all the world's a stage? Like, isn't life performative in a way?
Shit, Frank, where are we going with this, man?
I know, let's get deep, man. Let's get deep. I think that you were having a great conversation about authenticity the other day with one of your guests, and I think, there's a lot of focus on authenticity, but the thing about authenticity is authenticity could potentially mean like sharing every thought that crosses your mind at any given time, right?
Yes.
But that's not what we do. We have a whole world going on in our brains, and whether it's in our personal life or in our marketing, we're choosing what we actually say. We're choosing what we share. We share different things with different people. So there's always an element of performativeness, really, to being human, I think. And then when it comes to marketing, it's really about being authentic with purpose, and the purpose is I want to grow my business. So to a degree, yes, I think there is a performative element. But do I think that that's in a negative sense? No, absolutely not. It's just part of being human.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing I think when I think too much is I think there's no, everyone's looking for the secret of marketing. Everyone's looking for the nuggets, all of these things. It does my head in. It absolutely does. the key for me is just to get on and do the work. You know, when I say to
Mm.
people, I'm going to give you everything you need to know about sales and marketing, I think the main thing you need to know is that it's really easy. You know, just do something. Just like be investing something in trying to win new customers. You know, in looking a bit cooler, sounding a bit better, having the best product. You know, all those things. So there's that. It's really easy, and then it's enormous fun. You know, when you're actually succeeding in your business, it is really good fun. So I think with knowing those two things about marketing is a great place to start. It's much easier than you could possibly imagine. The whole world's trying to make it much more complicated, and when you start doing it and when it starts working, then it really is a lot of fun. And I get that sense from you and your mate Ryan. I get that sense that you have fun with marketing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I just think life's too short not to be having fun. So, and I get as well that because I had a conversation with Ryan about this recently. Like, I want to have fun. I want my marketing to be fun. I want my content to be fun. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm pushing every single client to like push the fun aspect of what they do, because some people may run a very serious business, or that might just fun might not be fundamental to their personality, and that's fine too. But like, as long as you're enjoying it, as long as you're getting enjoyment from it, that's really the key, I think. Yeah.
Because it's, yeah.
I think as well, just to go back to what you were saying a second ago about marketing. Yeah, that whole thing of like chasing those secrets, or that thing that's going to explode everything. I get so jaded from those types of marketers who are like selling a secret recipe for success. But I will say that I think that it's showing up, it's doing the work. But I do think that where people tend to fall down is not having the fundamentals in place and then building a good strategy on those fundamentals. So I think what happens a lot is that people, it's kind of like shiny object syndrome. They chase this latest marketing thing, and then they chase the next one, and then they chase another one. And actually, if they just kind of like stuck even with the most basic and simple marketing strategy that they came across, they would have a lot more success.
Yes. And I think marketing, the industry, is guilty of that. So we're seeing that again right now with this ChatGPT thing, aren't we? So now the whole world is ChatGPT. And it's almost like everything you were doing before can go out the window because now we've got this new thing. And it's not true. So to come back to the performative thing, I don't think it really matters what story we're telling, as long as it motivates people to actually be doing it. Do you know what I mean? And then I think however you're doing it is a step in the right direction. And now we get all this fantastic feedback. So it's not like you'd have to be pretty, although I'm doing a good job at the moment, you'd have to be pretty kind of tone deaf to continue to get it wrong. Do you know what I mean? It's like once you're on the course, if you're open to the feedback, and then it's hard to get it wrong. So I almost think in terms of the performative bit, it doesn't really matter what story we're telling. There are some crappy stories out there, like you need 200 leads a day, or Facebook is going to solve all your problems, or there's some crappy stories. But any story that actually gets people invested thinking about their customers and how they can have value in their lives, and then how they can communicate. You see, the drugs are so good. Communicate that to potential new customers. Then that's a good story, isn't it? That's a good performance. And if it motivates people to do something, then I think that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and that to go back to, you were asking about the acting. And in my introduction, you mentioned a lot of the kind of, I was a web designer. I also, I was a project manager in a web applications company. And I was, so I've had a lot of different roles within the online space. But I also studied art. I was a singer-songwriter there for about 5 minutes at one point. And I am an actor. And, at some point, I kind of looked at all these things that I was doing, and I was kind of like, these are all so different. What's going on? But I realized that like the common thread is that it's all storytelling. It's all telling stories, whether it's through the art, through the songs, through acting, or helping businesses to tell their story and helping businesses to get people interested in their story. And when I realized what that common thread was, that was when kind of everything made sense for me.
Okay, good, cool, because that's bringing us close to the thing that we need to speak about, which is how you add value to the world. But before we do that, we need to understand about this talking moustache. Have you really got a talking moustache?
I really have a talking moustache, and I think it was actually, again, I was in a chat with Ryan Anderson where he was asking about the talking moustache, and I was like, look, I think the best way that I can describe it is it's like having Larry David living on my face. Moustache is a much more shouty marketer than I am, so we disagree on a lot of points about marketing. And Moustache is not as much of a people person as I am. It doesn't have the same kind of respect for people as I would. So we have a lot of heated discussions around ethical marketing and that kind of thing.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this isn't actual schizophrenia, is it? This isn't.
This is not. No,
okay.
This is not. It's not something that requires that I get help, I don't think.
Okay, well, I'm going to start checking in. I'll let you know if I think you do. So this is a mechanism that you've set up to create a debate, is it, around marketing? Is that?
Yeah, like, I mean, moustaches are completely ridiculous. And I was thinking about this one day, and I was posting about it, and I was pointing out that sometimes I'll look in the mirror, and it's actually moustache will remind me that moustaches are ridiculous, but that's because life is ridiculous and too short not to enjoy it. So make a cup of coffee, put your big boy pants on, and go have a bit of fun and do the work. Yeah. So moustache isn't all bad either. Because of moustache's somewhat kind of no pun intended, frank outlook or frank approach to things. Moustache will tell me as well when it's time to cop myself on.
Okay. The only issue is that we don't actually know how this kind of plays out or represents itself in the world. Is this like video content that you're putting out, or is it?
No, actually, Moustache's voice does not get picked up by technological recording instruments. So if Moustache were to speak now, you wouldn't hear it, because I have thought, yeah, it'd be great. I'll do a podcast, just me and Moustache, but it doesn't work. So I transcribe the conversations that I have with Moustache and I post them on LinkedIn.
Okay, good. Okay, good. So two things then. Firstly, I think this idea of agency is really important, like to have an outside looking in. Somebody told me in one of these conversations that being good about marketing is about being able to read the label of the bottle that you're in. So this idea of an outside in, I think, is really important. And secondly, I think we all are a little bit timid when it comes to marketing. So we do need a moustache to tell us, maybe to be a bit braver.
Yeah, sometimes it's interesting because I'll have these conversations with Moustache, and like the other day we were talking about personalization in emails, and Moustache thought that it was a great idea to use this trick of saying, like, where you email someone and you use the personalization feature to say, hey Martin, we were just talking about you in a meeting the other day, and the CEO said that I should email you because you're doing great work online, but you might be really interested in this program that we have, and blah 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 blah. And I was saying, like, no, that's a step too far. I have no issue with personalization. I have no issue with like using somebody's name in an email. All of the emails that myself and Marcy send out are, they're very, they are written like a personal email, but we do not lie. We don't lie and say your name came up in a meeting, or the CEO specifically said to send an email to you when it's clearly an email to, thousands of people. And I've completely lost my train of thought, Martin. What was I talking about?
You were talking about the Moustache wanted to send this email with a lie in it, basically.
Yeah, but it's just that oh yeah, I know what I wanted to say. It was that these techniques work. So a lot of the time it's this conversation that I have with Moustache around, just because something works does not mean that justifies doing it, and you have to figure out where those lines are for yourself and what those ethical lines are. And sometimes it's a clear-cut case, as in this, where I'm like, no, you know what, that's just lying to someone. I'll absolutely not do that. But there are also much grayer areas where I'm having that debate, and Moustache is almost winning me over, and I'm like, yeah, you know what? Maybe Moustache is right. Maybe I'm reducing my effectiveness by refusing to do this thing that I know works, but I personally feel like that's not the type of brand I want to build. So they can be really interesting conversations.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to challenge you now, because if you are in the world to add value in people's lives, like if you are in the world to improve people's situation, does it matter if it's a little white lie that gets you to empower those people to be more successful?
I mean, I think it does. But this is the thing about, I suppose, morals and ethics, isn't it? That like everyone has to draw their own line in the sand. So a little white lie, I mean, I think making it seem like you have specifically sent someone an email after having a conversation about them, I think that's too big of a lie. I mean, I am a bit of a stickler for the truth, in as far as like I can define the truth, because we all know it's subjective. But a little white lie, yeah, maybe, but I would see something like that as being a little bit more than a white lie.
Okay, good. I mean, I haven't got the memory for lying, to be honest. I mean, I realised quite a long time ago I just don't have the memory. I struggle to remember the truth, so I'm not going to remember different variations of the truth. So that's why I don't even know if I ever did lie, really. But I came to the realisation that I just don't have the memory for telling lies. But it reminds me of when I started my career. We were selling advertising, and we were cold calling people all day, every day. There were like 60 of us on this huge floor in London. It was like media sales. We were hammering the phone 150 times a day. And there were people, like the secretary would always ask, who's calling? Who are you looking for? Are they expecting your call? So what people would say is, they'd say, yeah, they're expecting my call. And then the secretary would put them through. But then immediately the person who answers the phone says, well, I wasn't expecting your call. So that, for me, is a completely stupid lie. What I used to say to people when they said to me, are they expecting your call? Is I'd say, no, it's going to be a complete surprise. And then they'd laugh and then they'd put me through. Do you know what I mean? So it just seems to me, like I'm probably morally with you. But then there becomes the point. Because I'm on drugs, we're going to have this moral conversation. There comes a point where if what you're offering the world is so good for people, then surely there becomes a point where you are morally bound to do whatever you have to do to get it in front of them, to get their attention.
I wouldn't agree with that, but I don't think you would either. As in, like, if what you have is that important to them, then you should be able to communicate it in truthful terms that resonate with them, that get them on board with it. There shouldn't be any need for subterfuge, and there certainly shouldn't be any need for lies. So I think there's a certain amount of human psychology that goes into crafting a message, but for me it's all about, like I said, kind of entering into that conversation that they're having already in their head. So you need to know what language that they're framing this problem in themselves, so that you can then present it to them in the way that they understand, have it resonate with them completely, and have them say, yes, that's what I need.
Okay, good. I mean, I'm not advocating lying, but when the whole world is lying. So, for example, when I was running my business as a marketing agency, one time we went up to pitch. We would pitch very often for SEO. This was up until about 2014. But we never wanted to lie to a prospect. But this one guy, we did the whole pitch, we're having the conversation, we're getting on, we're good friends, and he said to us, you know what? You guys would slide much better on bullshit than you would on, did he say glass? I think he said glass. So he was essentially saying, lie to me a little bit. Like everyone else who'd been there was lying. Everyone else was saying, yeah, you want to be at the top 4 car insurance? We'll have you there next Tuesday. Do you know what I mean? It's like, whereas we never wanted to do that because I don't want to deal with the flack, because come next Tuesday, he's going to be on the phone every 20 minutes, and come the following Wednesday, you're going to get fired. And this is the way our industry kind of looks. So, yeah, I'm with you. I'm not going to lie to people. And that might be part of the reason that I don't provide those services anymore, because customers have this weird expectation, and everyone is lying to them to support that expectation. It's made a mockery, a mess of the whole marketing industry, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we work with solopreneurs and small businesses, and they have different expectations, I think, to larger businesses. And like, I can totally understand what that guy was talking about, but it's one of the reasons that I never felt at home in that whole space. And that's why I want to work with solopreneurs and small businesses, because I can totally understand that guy's perspective of like, look, lie to me a little bit because I need to make you look competitive, because I need to take it further up the chain, and it's just going to get rejected because these other people lied and said they could have it by tomorrow morning. And I just, I'm allergic to all of that. I can't stand it. I can't be coping with it. I don't want any part of it.
Yes.
So I that's why I love working with who we work with.
Okay, super cool. Excellent. All right, and for the record, I don't have the memory for lying, so I'm not lying to people, just in case anyone's watching this thinking, does he tell us lies? I don't do it. And I've suffered, I think, by not doing it. I don't think I have suffered. I've dodged a few bullets by not lying in those situations.
This is Moustache's point as well, of like, why are you not grabbing onto these things that work? I'm like, because that's not what I want my brand to be. I don't want to be the guy who lies to people.
Yeah, and I think, I'm not a spiritual kind of a person, but I think the kind of universe takes care of these things a little bit. Do you know what I mean? It's like, the reason maybe that the average lifespan of a digital marketing relationship, agency-customer relationship, is 3 months is because of all this BS, and I haven't resolved, like, is it the agency's fault? Is it the customer's fault? It's 50-50. They're bullshitting each other. They should stop. That's probably what I'd want to say about that. Okay, good. Shall we bring some order to this?
Absolutely. Why not? Sure.
Okay, good. Because, as you know, there are only 5 questions. So the first question is, how are you qualified to talk to us about your specialist subject? We'll get to exactly what your specialist subject is in a second. The second question is, who do you work with? How do you add value to their lives? We've got a sense of who those people are. The third question is, what is your recommendation for anyone looking to get better at your specialist subject? The fourth question is, what should people read, or what content should they consume? And then the fifth question is, who can you throw under the bus, like John threw you under the bus, who might endure or maybe even enjoy to have a conversation like this with me? So, your specialist subject, there's things... You're at a couple of different levels. I've seen you pitching yourself. One is digital marketer, one is personal brand, and the other one is like the storytelling. I feel like the storytelling and the personal brand go together, and for me, are much more interesting than digital marketing.
They all
is that
go
your special
together.
Subject?
Yeah, I mean, they all go together, really. Like, if we were going to say, like, what are you? What's the umbrella term for what you are? Yeah, digital marketer. But really, the specialist subject is helping small businesses grow using their online presence by helping them to rise above the blah.
Okay, and the blah is not having personal brand. Is that what it is?
The blah is not resonating. The blah is bland, dull content and marketing that just isn't resonating and is not helping you grow.
Okay, cool. Excellent. So, for the purposes of the keywords, what are we going to say? Because I think digital marketing is much less interesting than the personal brand and storytelling stuff. For the purposes of Google, what are we going to call your specialist subject?
Oh, can we not call it that big, long, huge phrase that I was just saying? No.
Okay, so the thing is, rising above the blah, I'm sure you are ranking for already, because that's your thing.
Yeah.
It does say, okay, so your professional headline is rise above the blah, grow your business by becoming better known for being good at what you do, brand strategy, digital marketing, content development. Can we say that your specialist subject is personal brand and storytelling? Because that's my agenda. I'd really like to have a conversation with someone about that.
Let's talk about that then. Let's talk about that. Yeah.
Okay, are you sure 100%? So I feel like I bullied you into it now.
No, I'm sure. I think let's see where this goes. And it is highly relevant because for a while there we thought that we might just niche down to working with solopreneurs, which there's clearly then it is a personal brand. That's essentially what it is. But we found actually that a lot of the time we're working with small companies, but it's all related back to personal brand, because what we help small companies with is to stop hiding behind a logo. Stop putting out this like bland content that is just kind of like logo driven and coming from this like anonymous, mysterious company source, and to step out from behind the logo, take ownership of it, and allow people to connect with the people in the business. So it does all come back to personal brand and telling the story of the business and encouraging people to become a part of that story with you. So yeah, I'm absolutely happy to talk about that.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, we're going to challenge if you can or not, because the first question is, how are you then qualified to talk to us about personal brand and storytelling?
Yeah, so we touched on this a little while ago in that, like, I think I keep losing track of how old I am. So I think it's like 25 years now in the online space, starting with website design, moving into like project management for web applications, becoming a technical director of an e-learning company, founding another web development company with my brother, and then going freelance to do web design and digital marketing. And then alongside all of that, the whole time, you have the studying art, you have the singer-songwriter, you have the fact that I'm an actor, and then you have that realization along the way that the thing that tied all those things together was storytelling, and that is what I'm passionate about, and that brought me to all those different kind of disciplines.
Okay, so you've been engaged in storytelling for those 25 years. It is 25 years. It's 97 your career starts on LinkedIn. So it is 25 years you've been telling stories.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good. All right, so maybe for the benefit of people, this idea of personal brand seems to have crept up on me in the last 6, maybe 12 months. Is this like,
Right.
yeah. So what is personal brand and where has it come from? Why are people talking about personal brand now? It seems to me all of a sudden. Maybe I wasn't paying attention. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been around for a while, but it did have a bit of an explosion there, or a resurgence, I think, especially if you were certainly if you were on LinkedIn. But as for like what it is, one of the things that I actually find fascinating about personal brand is that it's a really divisive term. The term itself is really divisive. A lot of people will tell you that they hate personal branding, that it's absolutely it's horrendous. Don't go near it. Don't do it. Don't believe in it. No, awful. But then if you get into a conversation with them and you say, well, like, what should you do instead? More often than not, they will then go on to describe personal branding perfectly. Because, really, personal branding is just becoming better known for being good at what you do. It is one of the exercises that I do when I'm talking to people about personal branding is I just get them to close their eyes, put their hand on their heart, and just take a moment to think about someone they love. And then I ask them to describe what actually happens. What happens when you do that? And what happens for me is like, the person kind of exists in my consciousness somewhere, but they're not actively in my mind. But once I start to think about them like that, it's like there's a kind of a cloud back here, and they come zooming up from that cloud, and they come to front of mind essentially. And then I'll start to think about like little things about them, or little experiences I've had with them, and I'll start to, the corners of my mouth might start to twitch up. I'll start to smile. I'll start to feel like what feels like a warmth here. That's essentially what you want when you're building your personal brand. You want people to have that experience of you when they think of you. And to be really technically correct about it, your personal brand then is it's like the Venn diagram of all of those feelings, all the people in your potential market who know about you. It's the Venn diagram. It's the common things they think about you. So by showing up consistently with authenticity and purpose, you can help to shape that Venn diagram. You can help to shape what it is people think about you, so that it is a common experience for people. And the fantastic thing about online tools is that it makes that very, very easy, because humans are complicated, humans are messy, humans, you when you interact with people in real life, with your friends, for example, it takes a while for them to see the patterns. It takes a while for them to see the patterns in your behavior and start to form an idea of who you are. Online tools allow you to craft that message very carefully, so that you are putting out into the world the things that are most relevant to you. And proper personal branding is, like I said, authenticity with purpose. So it is not that I am saying that you should be putting something forward that is some high gloss, ridiculously photoshopped image of yourself. No, it should be the real you. It's just that it doesn't have to be all of you all the time. It's the things that are relevant to growing your business and to allowing people to make a connection with you.
Wow. Okay, cool. So a couple of things then come up for me. I mean, people struggle to understand what brand is. And I've had some conversations here about what brand is, and I'm not entirely resolved. I think that's a really good description. It's what comes to mind when you think about that person or that entity. So person, if it's a personal brand; entity, if it's like a business brand or a corporate brand. And okay, so there's a couple of things. I'll tell you what both things are, and then you can let me know what you think. The first thing is probably that people are forming these opinions about you anyway. So people are are coming to an impression of you. Like when your name comes up, they will have images that come to mind. And that almost feeds into the second thing, is that people might be not wanting to invest in personal brand because maybe it feels contrived. Maybe it feels a little bit deceitful that you are trying to position yourself in a particular kind of a way. So those are the two sides of that same coin, are they? People are forming opinions of you anyway.
Yeah.
But people don't want to shape what those opinions are because they feel it's contrived.
Yeah, and I mean, I would argue again. I would just go back to like this is life. I mean, you're really just speeding up a process that happens anyway, because people will notice the patterns over time. So you're just making those patterns clearer for them. And if you do it, like we said, with authenticity, then you're not fooling anybody. You're not trying to be fake about it. You're literally just speeding up the process for yourself, which is good. Which is a good business idea. It makes good business sense to do that. But yeah, I don't for a moment condone lying again, which
No.
I think, I think people have a misconception that personal branding is lying about yourself, and it absolutely isn't. It's putting forward the relevant, authentic things and allowing people to see them more quickly. But also, it's like we said at the top of the conversation. In real life, we are selective. It's just that we're not thinking about it. But like, you share different things with your best friend to what you share with somebody that you've just met at a lunch at a friend's place, to potentially what you share with your family. We are selective. We are putting out different things in the world to different people, and this is just the business version of that.
Yeah, 100%. And just being more mindful of the way you present yourself in the world. I suppose that's where it starts. It's like, this is the impression I'm giving. Okay, good. I had another thought. Okay, so where does personal brands feed into like personal development, maybe? So maybe you can come up with a slightly improved version of yourself that you want to present to the world. I mean, you do, don't you? You want to present yourself as being effective and enthusiastic and energized and all those things. Does it work like that, where you set yourself like a standard and then you work to meet that standard by becoming a better person, I wonder, because you're more mindful about the way you want to present yourself to the world?
I think that's a really interesting question. I focus much more on understanding who you are and putting that out into the world. However, I do think that along the way, if you get a better understanding of who you are, and then, I think there's always that possibility that you get that understanding and then you think, okay, do you know what? I need to up my game here because that's going to be really relevant to my audience and I need to improve there. But for example, my approach would not be to put forward something that isn't already the case. My approach is analyze who you are and what you do and who you do it for, and communicate that effectively. But there's no doubt, I think, that in that process, there are times when you kind of go, okay, but this needs to level up.
So now I'm imagining you sit down with somebody and they say, I want a better personal brand. And then you very quickly realize that they're a complete shithouse. And it's like, well, you just have to start being a better person. I'm sure it doesn't happen. But then the other thing that kind of occurs to me is it's the people, because people, I think, in the main, are quite reserved. People aren't, I mean, maybe this has changed now with the way media works, but people aren't naturally, and maybe it hasn't changed with the way social media works. We just see everyone who's interested in self-promotion and we still don't see the people who aren't. So it seems to me that it's like probably the quieter, more resilient, more industrious kind of people who maybe are the more attractive. Do you know what I mean? It feels to me like the most outgoing people are the people who probably need least to be, I don't know. What am I talking about, Frank?
Yeah, I do think you've raised a really interesting question. And, so I work with my wife, Marcy, and Marcy is an introvert and I am more extrovert. And it does raise an interesting point about it. I think it's probably certainly easier to build a personal brand if you have that more extroverted side to yourself. But there's always a way. There's always a way to do it. So, I mean, for example, I am very active on LinkedIn and I'm very much in there chatting with people, having discussions, etc. And then Marcy is much more focused on long form, in-depth content that is published on other sources, which is building her personal brand in a completely different way. So there's always a way for the personality type involved to build their personal brand, for sure.
Yeah, and if they are a solopreneur, then there's always a benefit. There must always be a benefit to what's the word? Projecting yourself in a way that makes you more easily found, more easily approachable, more easily understood. All of these things. So it's almost like you don't need to be the outgoing loudmouth, blah blah blah. This is me. This is me. This is me. And I think people will find that much more attractive. There was another question.
This is the thing, is that, like, we're not talking necessarily about becoming like the next big influencer, or because I was talking to a client recently and they were kind of saying, oh, but I'm just not the type of person who's going to turn into and they referenced a kind of a big name in the industry who has like hundreds of thousands of followers, etc. And I was like, yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. You don't need to do that. Like, all you need to do is build an audience of people who are interested in what you do so that you can sustain and grow your business. That for you right now is not hundreds of thousands of people. That's getting to your first 5,000, which is eminently doable.
Yeah. And because people don't necessarily, people do want to do business with the loudmouth, especially in our industry. I've got a personal thing against Gary Vaynerchuk. I really can't stand the guy. But there's an example of, like, I can't believe it's not everyone wants to do business like that with people like that. Like, lots of people do. I think it's the Kardashian effect. They want to have the most famous marketer working for them, and he behaves the way he does and is the most famous. So that's absolutely fine for him. But I like the two things, like your approach, which comes back again to the thing we were saying earlier, is that you have to be able to read the label of the bottle you're in. I think especially quieter people, less extrovert people, are going to need some support to have somebody look at them and say, well, these are your superpowers. These are the things that people are going to really value about you. And I'm thinking about salespeople, because salespeople really need to think, like, as a population, really need to think about their personal brand, because all anyone really wants from a salesperson is for them to be informed and connected and reliable and enthusiastic and all those things, well researched, and to be supporting them with their problems. So I think it would be really easy for salespeople to become that, so they wouldn't even have to lie. Like, I just research more, just be more connected, just be more interested. So I think it's really interesting. I think people will. I think it will depend, but I think people will be as interested to find people who are less aggressive, extrovert, outgoing, to support
Absolutely. I mean, it's like again at the top of the conversation we talked about John Espirian, and I talked about the community that he has built and how I never regret connecting with anybody from the Espresso Plus community because they're all lovely. It's like a guarantee,
Yes.
and that's because John's personal brand has attracted those like-minded people, and that's what it's all about. So Gary V, I would have no doubt, is has surrounded by communities of louder people. So it's all about attracting and equally repelling. So it's all about bringing the people in. So you mentioned you mentioned a minute ago that you were envisaging me talking to someone who was looking at building a personal brand, and I was like, well, you're just going to have to become a better person. But thankfully I don't have to deal with that because I don't attract those types of people.
Yes.
And that's what it's all about, really.
Yeah, and that was the headline from John's interview, was personal branding done well will attract the right people. And you're absolutely right. And his personal brand is impeccable. This relentless. So this is where maybe for me it crosses over where, what does he call himself? The relentlessly helpful LinkedIn expert.
No.
Where now he's set a standard, he's set a stake in the ground for the whole world. Like if he wakes up one day and he's not quite feeling relentless, he'd better sort himself out because that's the stake that he's laid in the ground. And I think that is where it becomes really, potentially really positive, where you actually do kind of state to the world, this is the expectation I'm setting for myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Excellent. All right. So are you ready for some good news?
Sure. I'd love some good news.
Okay, we're overdue for some good news, aren't we? The drugs are still working. That's the first bit of good news. The second bit of good news is that I think you are eminently qualified to talk to us about personal brand and storytelling.
Excellent.
We haven't really touched on the storytelling yet.
No, we haven't touched on that much. Do you want to dive into that a little bit now? And sorry, I keep having to adjust my glasses. I strained them recently and they just keep sliding down.
That's okay. It's not noticeable that you keep doing that. Until you brought it up, no one would have known.
I'm going to watch this back and I'm going to count the number of times I do it.
You don't need to do that. You really don't need to do that. I'll have someone do that for you. So where are we? Storytelling. Because storytelling also, not as recently as personal brand maybe, but it's also kind of come on in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years maybe, where people have got very interested in storytelling or people are promoting themselves as storytellers. So what's storytelling about then?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, what's fascinating to me is it has exploded as a theme over the last number of years, but I think it's because we realized that really everything revolves around story. So I remember reading a book by Will Storr called The Science of Storytelling, and I'm probably going to completely misquote it now because it was a while back, but the opening of the book just grabbed me straight away because he was essentially saying, look, we're all going to die and our brains are housed in a little black box in our heads, and they tell us stories constantly to distract us from the fact we're going to die. And I thought, wow, this book has me. I've got to read on. And basically, this is how we've evolved. Is we tell ourselves stories and we tell each other stories. And some scientists now believe that like everything in memory is stored via story. So we don't have like a little database for facts. We have these stories that allow our brain to remember things. Whether it's the story around where we discovered that point of information or the person who told us that, or so we never, you never access the data on its own. You're always like, oh yeah, I read that article on the day just after I had my coffee, and I remember now that article said it, blah 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 blah. So I think it's exploded because we've discovered just how fundamental it is to being human, and it's a fantastic way to convey information. It's just pleasing to the human brain when you wrap something up in a story structure. And then for kind of, so it's fantastic for the business to put material out in story form because people relate to it. And it's also really useful to use story within the business to know exactly what story you're telling so that you can more easily remember, oh yeah, that's what we're about. Oh yeah, that's what we're doing. Oh yeah, that's what we're communicating and who we're communicating it to.
Okay, excellent. Because we kind of feel that. It feels like stories are more memorable. Like that's how we remember things. It definitely does feel like that. And the thing is, I think I've got maybe a looser relationship with the truth than you because, like, I don't know, I studied philosophy a little bit when I was at university, and it goes back to Plato's cave, and it's all about that's what is it? A metaphor or an allegory, one of those two things, for the fact that we are all only perceiving the world. There is only perception. There is no real truth. At which point, then it becomes all about stories. It is just stories, and that makes it. Once you kind of understand that, then that makes it really easy, I think, to start presenting quite powerful stories. And if the intention of the story is good, the intention is to motivate someone to do something that's going to improve their lives, then I think that's good.
I 100% agree. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, so we use story in almost everything that we do, because we try to bring everything back to some kind of form of story structure. We use it to define the brand so that there is a story that you are inviting your customer into, which is essentially the story of like how somebody goes from never having heard of you through to hearing about you, through to having a little bit of, I suppose you could relate it back to the ADA attention, then a little bit of interest, and then the desire to work with you, and then finally taking action and becoming a customer. So every customer journey is a story, and the story is so. This is actually the most powerful and simple story tool that I use in almost everything, which is, what is a story? So a story is a character struggling to achieve a goal, overcoming obstacles along the way, and experiencing transformation as a result. So every customer or every person who becomes a customer has to go through that story of like they're trying to achieve something, they have a goal, there are obstacles in their way, and you have to help them overcome those obstacles, and you have to deliver that transformation for them at the end. And so we tie everything back really to that story. So it's this, and then there's the stories that you need to tell people in order to get their attention, the stories that you need to tell people to develop their interest, the stories that you need to tell people to give them a desire to work with you, and the story that you tell on your optimized offer page that gets them to take an action.
Fantastic. And so, and what you really want to do is tell the story that resolves the conversation they're having in their head. Because I had a brilliant conversation with a guy called Simon Bowen, who's got this models method, but he talks about like buyer hesitancy or he talks about buyer safety is what he talks about. It's like you have to make it really, really safe for people to buy, because they are expecting to get ripped off in most instances whenever they engage with someone that they might be selling something to. Are there defined components? Like, are there defined ingredients for a story? Like you said, so there has to be a character, there has to be a challenge, there has to be obstacles, there has to be transformation. Does there have to be suspense? Does there have to be a hero? Does there have to be a villain? Like,
there's loads. Yeah, I mean, there's loads of different story models, and some of them get really complex. And there's the guide, and there's the inciting incident, and there's all different kinds of story models. Some of them get insanely complicated, and that's why I love to just bring it back to the absolute bare bones of the four main ingredients. But yes, there are all kinds of complex models that you can follow to make it a much more juicy story. And one of the things I think that they've discovered that makes something really compelling to read is this idea of like almost like constant peaks and valleys. So the hero has to kind of go up and manage to achieve something, feel like they're making progress, but then they have to be brought low again in order to climb the next hill. And that's what keeps people watching or reading or listening, is this constant roller coaster almost effect of the story.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because most sales stories they're literally, I'm going to transform you. And there is no challenge. There is it's like, buy this thing, it's going to be amazing for you. But that's not reality. Reality is actually there are very real challenges going on that are preventing people from realizing these opportunities for themselves. And there are going to be obstacles. Like, for example, they feel like they get screwed every time they speak to a salesperson is one of the very real obstacles, maybe. Okay, cool. That's really cool. So now are you ready for some good news?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, well, now I think you're definitely eminently qualified to talk to us about personal brand and storytelling.
Excellent.
It's such a relief when we get here, isn't it?
It is.
One day I'm going to have to say something like, I just think you're talking rubbish, so we'll just end it right
now. Yeah. Pick another subject. Tiny coffee.
Specialise in something else, yeah.
Tiny coffee cups, Frank.
Yeah, we haven't really spoken about the tiny coffee cup, which is definitely part of your brand. Okay, cool. So that takes us then to question number 2. But we've kind of covered a lot of this already. Who do you work with? How do you add value to their lives? So we've established that they're solopreneurs. Solopreneurs is something also that seems to have come around in the last 10 or 12 years, or maybe even more recently than that, or small businesses. Is there a particular vertical? Is there a particular industry that you do well in, or?
No, we have quite a mix of clients. But what they all have in common is kind of what I was saying earlier. They all have either they're solopreneurs, or they have they're not all necessarily family businesses, but they very much have a family business vibe about them. And when it comes to companies, so in terms of solopreneurs, we work with a lot of like service-based solopreneurs. And then in terms of the companies, we tend to attract companies who are doing some really interesting things that are good for the world, which I love. And quite honestly, that is, I don't know if that's a function of our brand or what, but we have a health food shop, Organico. We have worked with Apis Protect, who they have like a machine learning solution for looking after your beehives because they believe in the importance of bees. We are working with MyGug, who have food waste solution for small food businesses. So yeah, a lot of people who are just like have businesses that are making the world that little bit of a better place, which is fantastic.
Cool. No, that is really cool. And I think I would say, and John would say, that's a function of your brand. That's your brand working that. And it's interesting that you say attract. Are you not proactive at all? You don't go out looking for customers?
We obviously we do marketing, but we don't do any currently. We don't do any direct outgoing calls or emails or prospecting like that. No.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, cool. So you've got your process outlined here on your LinkedIn profile, which is really handy. So I know what you do for them, but maybe we can talk about this a little bit more. We kind of touched on define your personal brand, the foundation stuff that everyone forgets to do. Why do people forget to do that, Frank?
I don't, it's a good question as to why they forget to do it. But I think it is because the marketing area is such a noisy, shouty space, and there's always something shiny and new to chase. And I think people chase those shiny new things, and they forget to actually do the fundamentals of, hang on a second, what exactly is it that we do, that we stand for? Who is it that we do it for, and how do we help them? And actually define it and get it down on paper, and then use that as the base for their communications. So few people that we come in contact with actually have that work done.
Yeah, because the marketing world has told them you need to be at the top of the search engines, or you need to be advertising on Facebook, or you need to be, doing all of these millions of things. You need to be on TikTok, and so it becomes really confusing then marketing because all right, you have to do all these things, but what on earth are you talking about? And so people. I think very often like that is the thing. It's like I'm supposed to be doing all these things, but what am I actually talking about? And it's amazing to me how often they don't know what it is that they're talking about.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, also how little they know who they are talking to as well. We make an awful lot of assumptions, but a lot of the time we haven't really dug into who are we talking to and what are those conversations going on in their head, like we talked about earlier. So when we define somebody's brand, it's actually a mix between, okay, who are you? What do you stand for? What are your strengths? What are your values? But equally, if not more important, is who do you serve? Who are they? Let's talk to them. Let's find out why they came to you. Let's find out what they were struggling with. Let's find out how you've helped. Let's find out what they tried before coming to you. And also, if we can, let's talk to people who did not buy from you, and let's find out what triggered them to get in touch and what prevented them from actually engaging you.
And this goes to what I was saying earlier about how easy actually marketing is. Because your customers hold the secret. They know the value that you deliver in the world. And all you have to do is ask them. But everyone thinks that some hoodoo has gone on if people are continuing to buy from them. And they don't want to disrupt that by bothering them. Do you know what I mean? It's the most stupid thing.
Yeah.
And then the thing for me is once you've done this foundational work, you've got content for years. You've got content for years because all of a sudden now people are telling you, this is why I struggled. This is why I was in the market. This was my experience of being in the market. This is what I saw from you that kind of attracted me to you. These are the challenges we faced. Like you say, every customer journey is a story. And for every customer you've got, there's a story. That's content for years.
And then your messaging is no longer a shot in the dark. It's this is what people are thinking. This is how people perceive us. This is the trouble people are having, and this is how they phrase it. So Marcy is the messaging strategist, but Marcy will tell you that like the best copy actually comes from the customers.
100%. 100%. I mean, I've told this before. I'll tell it again. I used to stand video camera. It wasn't video. It's my phone in front of my cameras. A video camera in front of my customer. If there was even the whiff that they were going to say something nice about me, I'd put up a camera. Who are you? What do you do? Why did you decide to use us? What have we done that's good? What have we done that's bad? What would you say to anyone who's thinking about using us? It was the best content. And yeah, I won't tell you the whole story. Go and watch the videos. You'll see over and over and over again. But customers said things like, "The effective marketing company's certainly been effective for us." Where was I going to find a copywriter that I could pay to come up with that? Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it's insane. Like your customers hold the secret. If there's a secret in marketing, your customers know the value that you're adding in the world. But I think this goes to a deeper thing, which is that business owners don't really seem to understand that they are in the world to add that value. Do you know what I mean? They don't seem to understand that they're in the world to serve. It feels like most business owners, feel like they're in the world to shift product, whether it's a service or it's something that comes in a box or whatever it is. They feel like they have to shift it. Do you know what I mean? Because it's not good enough to shift itself, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think also compounding that is that, and again, maybe it's just because of the way that the marketing space is, there's also still, even now, this kind of misconception that there's just this like crowd of anonymous people who are dying to give you their money if you just show up online.
Yes.
And it's like, no, there's people out there. There's people out there who you can help with your product or service, but they're people. Each person needs to feel like you can help them, and
Yes.
it's no different to meeting someone at a networking event, or it's no different to someone walking into your shop. You have to understand that those people and meet those people where they're at, and be respectful of them.
100%. But people, I think the issue is that people don't have the self-respect. Like it feels to me like businesses really feel like anyone who buys from them must be a complete idiot. Sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Because they're so lacking in self-respect or lacking in self-value that they don't, and this is why they have to have the conversation with their customers to understand they're not idiots. They are perfectly sensible people. Because the issue with, like, if you're a service business especially, it's like you obviously do because you've done the work to, but you've got no right really understanding why anyone should struggle with their personal brand. Like, you're brilliant at it. Do you know what I mean? So to put yourself in those shoes takes the realization that that's what you have to do, and then it takes doing the work to actually do it. Doing the work isn't necessarily any more difficult than buying your customers lots of coffees or buying them lunch or taking them out for a game of golf, or that's what the work looks like, you know. But that's the issue, is accountants don't understand why people can't do their accounts, you know, or plumbers can't understand why people can't fix their own toilets, or do you know what I mean? So it takes that departure. You have to get outside of yourself.
And I don't know why we are so reluctant to just talk to people, or why we feel like it would be such a huge imposition to ask for that time.
Because they must be idiots because they're buying from us. And if we remind them, they're going to realize what idiots they are for buying from us, and they're going to stop, and then we're going to go out of business. That's it. I honestly think that's it. People really believe that anyone who continues to spend money with them, especially in small businesses and solopreneurs and those kinds of things, I think they feel like they're getting away with something, and they don't want to upset the apple cart by reminding them, you continue to pay our invoices. What people need to know is that nobody's so stupid that they're going to continue to pay your invoice unless they're getting value out of it. You know, they're not going to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really interesting hypothesis that you have there, that it's basically a symptom of imposter syndrome, really, that is preventing people from just having those chats with their customers. And I get it, because I've been there. I've been the person who has been reluctant to chat to my customers. But once you start, you realize that, like, the worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to say, look, Frank, I'm really sorry, I just don't have time. But the majority of people are actually more than willing to help you out, especially if you have helped them with your product or service.
And it's not even helping you out. You are helping them. Like, they're giving you feedback. What goes on typically when you start speaking to your customers is there'll be something else you can help them with, or they'll know someone who you could help them. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it actually blows my mind. But I do think this is a real issue, and I do think this is what prevents people from being as successful as they need to. From there, your process is to align the online presence. That makes absolute sense. I think that speaks for itself. Shine through your content, and then amplify your message. So these things, I'm just aware that I've only got 9 minutes more of your time. We're only on question number 2.
Oh, wow. How did that happen?
Well, it happens because question number 3, 4, and 5 are extraordinarily short. So we're not, apart from we can't. I mean, it sounds self-explanatory to me. Align your online presence. So make sure, once you've understood the value that you offer in the world and what your values are, that you make sure that that's the way you present yourself. Shining through your content is going to be something to do with speaking moustaches, is it?
Yeah, exactly. So just to go back to Align very briefly, there's kind of 2 aspects to Align. One is align it with the branding work that you've done to make sure that it all is speaking to that brand. And the second part is aligning it with the customer journey. So the second part of Align your online presence is making sure that you have a strategy in place that is helping people and leading people from never having heard of you to engaging with you, to getting into maybe a more intimate space like email, where you can nurture them a little bit more and fan the flames of desire, to then lead them back to, say, an optimized offer page where they're actually going to take action. So there's kind of 2 aspects to the alignment: aligning it with the brand and aligning it with the customer journey. And then shine through your content. Yeah, absolutely. It's identifying what's your talking mustache, what are you going to be able to bring to the table that's actually going to resonate with your audience, and just helping people as well to just bring their personality to their content, rather than putting out bland drivel that unfortunately is still very prevalent. And I think because, again, of fear of kind of stepping forward a little bit.
Yeah, I think 100%. I think 100% people are playing within themselves. You know, people are not, because they're not doing this work. You know, speak to your customers. They absolutely 100% know. Like, in all of the work that I've done with all of the customers, like, the first thing, whenever I could do it, the first thing we did was put together some kind of customer satisfaction survey. And it was astounding. Every time we did it, it generated leads, it generated referrals, it generated great content. Every time we did it, and not once. And we must have had conversations with hundreds of people. We must have sent tens of thousands of emails. No one ever emailed back and said, "Shit, are we still paying your invoices? We hate you." Yeah. No one ever said that, and it's never going to happen. You know, it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, excellent. Shall we move on to question number 3?
Yeah, what was that again?
We are going to run over by a couple of minutes. Is that okay?
Fine with me, absolutely.
Okay, super cool. So question number 3, we're going to chop this up for TikTok. So ideally, it will be less than a minute long. What is your recommendation for anyone who's thinking, okay, I need to get started on my personal brand, or I need to invest more in my personal brand?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, really, we covered this in the previous conversation, because it is define your personal brand, align your online presence, shine through your content, and amplify your message. And if I was going to give like one tip one tip to like get all this started and really make a huge leap forward, it would be exactly what we've talked about. Talk to your customers. Talk to your customers and find out, what was it that prompted them to get in touch? What problem were they trying to solve? What else had they tried? And what have the results been now?
100%. I think that's a great recommendation. And then I would recommend that they pick up the phone and speak to you, providing they are the sort of people who are worthy of your time and attention.
Fantastic.
Cool. Good. So question number 4. What should people read, or what content should people be consuming? Are you a reader or are you a content consumer?
I'm a bit of both, but I'm definitely a reader. I love business books. I keep meaning to actually get back to reading some fiction, but there's so many great business books to be read and so many on my reading list already. So I would recommend This Is Marketing by Seth Godin. And these are the books that I always recommend to everyone. It's almost like if you want to get the foundations of some really good marketing in place, these books will really serve you. So the first one is This Is Marketing by Seth Godin, and that kind of sets the tone for. I think of that book as the kind of the modern philosophy of marketing. So it's not necessarily going to get into the nuts and bolts of exactly what you should do, but it's going to get you in the right mindset for the kind of marketing that everybody should be doing. Then if you do want to get into the nuts and bolts, I think any small business would be really well served by reading the one-page marketing plan by Alan Dibb. That is a really good foundational course in kind of like all of the different things that you should be looking at in the marketing of your small business. Then I would also recommend, and it's funny, this book seems to have become quite a divisive one recently. I'm noticing a kind of a pushback on LinkedIn about it. I think it's a great book, Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And it's a great book for really thinking about your website in particular. And how story can become like a fundamental part of your business. But in particular, what should and shouldn't be on your website, because like we find this all the time that people come to us for marketing, but their website is never going to actually get anyone to take an action because they have just put everything that they could possibly think of onto the website. So Building a Story Brand, really good at figuring out, okay, what should and shouldn't actually be on here. And then I'm also going to recommend Known by Mark Schaefer, which is the blueprint for building a personal brand. Absolutely fantastic book.
Known with a G or known?
Known, as in
Known.
Yeah,
Mark
brilliant
Schaefer.
book.
Excellent, cool. And the one that you spoke about earlier, The Science of Stories, who was that by?
Oh, Will Storr.
Will Storm or Stork?
Storr.
Ah, Will Storm. Okay,
Yeah,
fantastic.
fascinating book. And I'll have a little honorable mention section as well, which is the Belonging to the Brand, also by Mark Schaefer, just been released, and absolutely just everyone needs to read that book. But if you haven't got the kind of like the fundamentals in place already, it might be a bit premature, which is why I'm putting it in the honorable mention section. But in general, yeah, it's all about community and how important community is in marketing today and how important it's about to become as well. And the other honorable mention is for the most amazing marketing book ever by Mark Schaefer and friends. And myself and Marcy are two of those friends. So we will have a chapter in there about what we talked a lot about today, marketing research and talking to your customers.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, you just put 8 books on my reading list now, so thank you for that.
Excellent.
Good.
So the most
I'm reading them and I'm reviewing them because I'm trying to be more mindful about, so that's kind of what this exercise has turned into. I'm talking to amazing people. I'm reading the books they recommended. That's where it's going. Excellent. Cool. So now, before we get to question number 5, I just need to check in and see how you're feeling about your experience of having been on the Talk Marketing show.
I have been having a ball. I love it. You asked a few minutes ago, was I okay to go on for a couple of minutes? And man, I could stay here all afternoon chatting to you. This is fantastic.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Of course, there is intent behind the question, because if you've had a nice experience, then I imagine you're going to find it easier to throw a couple of people under the bus who might enjoy, maybe like you have, or maybe just endure to have a conversation like this with me. Have you got some people in mind for me?
Absolutely. I mean, I would definitely recommend you talk to Marcy, who is the messaging strategist in Frank and Marcy. And she's actually, in terms of marketing research and copywriting, they're kind of the ingredients that go into the messaging strategy. So any of those topics would be perfect for Marcy. And then, I mean, it's such a difficult question because there's so many people, like there are so many people. But I'm just like off the top of my head, I'm going to go with, say, Mark Schaefer, because I mentioned so many of his books. Talking to Mark Schaefer about community would be brilliant, I think. And also because I've had some chats with him recently, and because I followed him for so long and learned so much from him, I'm going to mention John Loomer as well, who would be on the subject of Facebook ads. And he's just, lovely guy. And we had some really interesting chats recently about how marketing on social media has become so different in the last couple of years.
Fantastic. Excellent. And if you could, I would imagine you've got some influence over Marcy, but if you could put together some kind of introduction in the way that John did for us, then that would be really cool. We will pick it up and run with it from there. But they sound like really interesting, brilliant conversations. So I thought, I mean, we do love John Espirian, but I thought he put you under a little bit of pressure when he said it's endlessly fascinating talking to you. But I think you smashed it out of the park, man. It might just be because I'm on drugs, of course. Let's not discount that too much.
Yeah, you'll rewatch this later and you'll be like, what was I thinking?
Okay, super cool. So the good news is we got to the end. So what we need to do now is just say goodbye. We've run over by 2 minutes. So we'll say goodbye now for the benefit of anyone who's still watching, and then I'll stop recording. We'll say goodbye like normal human beings. But Frank, this has been such a cool conversation. Thank you so much for your time, man. I've really enjoyed every minute of this.
Thank you for inviting me on. I've loved it. Absolutely loved it.
You're very welcome. Cool. Thank you for taking the time to check out this episode of the Talk Marketing Show. If you found this interesting and useful, then YouTube thinks you're going to enjoy this one. And this is the latest thing that we've posted. If you haven't yet and you could take a second to like, share, subscribe and comment, then that will give us the motivation to continue on this epic, epic journey.